Today I'm going to talk about the lyrics to Drifting and how it pertains to the story of In Somnia. If anybody remembers basic storytelling structure in English class, this is more or less the exposition, and the song introduces the characters, settings, and themes of the entire story. So it takes place in a lucid state of dreaming, and the lyrics start off with, "At the edge of the world, I behold, as I gaze into the sea, I see my reflection, a projection of my spirit." So here I use an atypical rhyme scheme where the last word of the first line rhymes with the first word of the next line. And this is what really got me so obsessed with writing lyrics and crafting poetry into storytelling, as opposed to just rhyming things at the end for the sake of doing it. I was not able to keep up with the rhyming, so it sort of falls apart after that, but there is some internal rhyme that comes back later in the song. A section creates an image of the landscape for the story, which is on the shoreline at the first edge of the world, bordered between land and water. I, the protagonist, look in and see my reflection, which is an important theme throughout the album. And I'll do these breakdowns in first person because this is my personal story. So let's pick up with the next part of the verse. "A projection of my spirit, beckoning me to join him below the surface. I try to resist his call, but a wave engulfs and drags me out." So I see my reflection, basically a ghost of myself, which calls me into the water and I'm hesitant to go, but a force beyond my control pulls me into the ocean anyway. I don't write a lot of prose because I'm not usually very good at it, but I do like that the song is very prose-like, at least for the intro here. There's a near rhyme going on with surface and resist, but it is a little bit of a stretch. Prose writing is something that I want to work on a lot more into the future, but for here, we get to the chorus. "As I'm lifted, sifted away from sand, as I'm drifting, drifting away from land," just describing the process of being washed away. And I'll come back to this part later. The next verse takes us from the first edge of the world, the shoreline, to the second edge of the world, where the ocean falls off into nothingness. It's like the cover art for one of my favorite modern black metal albums, Pritchella Vodens by Imperium Decadens, if you want to reference that. So the verse goes, "Following the current that rips me away, thrashing helplessly, I fade, race to where the water falls. There's no place to go but down. I close my eyes before I'm gone. What lies beyond, I'll never know. For as I braced to plunge, the wind it carried me to the sun." There's a lot of internal rhyming here, although it's a little bit more irregular. A lot of water-related references, rip currents, waterfalls, and plunge, which is a type of waterfall. Instead of going over the edge when he's carried to the end of the world, I'm taken up by the wind to face with the sun, which is the second important theme in the album. And the chorus that follows this part is, "As I'm lifted, whisked across the sky, as I'm drifting, drifting up high." So combined with the previous chorus, I'm not really sure why I used baking terms here, sifted and whisked, but they do a good job in the context of telling what's happening in the story. So for the harsh vocals, we have, "It brings me face to face with a golden, warm embrace, assuring me I will be saved if I should see it rise again." Basically, you have two conflicting powers in the story. The sun here, which is a symbol of hope and life, and the reflection from the beginning, which is a symbol of despair and death. And throughout the album, as the protagonist, I'm basically battling between the two messages that I'm getting. So at this point of the song, I get assurance from the sun that everything's going to be okay. But the vision, it begins to fade. The dream, it starts to slip away. The sea of stars disintegrates as I fall into the wake. And I really love these two lines. The last two lines there. "I visit with the sun, but at the end, I start to fall backwards, and the sea of stars, the space, begins to disappear. As I fall into the wake," it has a double meaning of waking up to a falling sensation, which is called a hypnic jerk. That's something that I actually get very often. And falling into the wake of the ocean. So the very last verse, "Staring at the opposite end, drenched in a sea of regret, trying not to recollect the thoughts that flood right through my head. As I lie and contemplate, presented by the same debate, shall I stay to see the sun, or end the night before the dawn?" Basically, I wake up to a cold sweat and debate between the two sides, to see the sun or to end the night before the dawn, which I think is a very great description. So that's basically Drifting, one of the most important songs I've ever written, and it really sets the stage for the rest of the album.